U.S. Congressman Hakeem Jeffries of New York, who sits on the House Judiciary Committee. Thank you both for joining us right now. I think I'm looking at Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi here with you two standing next to each other. But you're much, Congresswoman, you're much. I must say. But let me ask you about what's been going on in this Russian probe and the fact that this Rudy Giuliani seems out of his mind. He's making references to tapes. He's making references to and then he'll deny he's even talking about tapes. He'll admit it to the fact that the president signed on in his written response to Robert Mueller about working with about Rudy Giuliani's role and what he told him to say and all this stuff. And then he denies it all. What do you make of what's going in this carry-on White House right now?
I actually think it's intentional. I think it is his way of leaking out explosive information, drip by drip, and then confusing everyone by saying one thing one day and contradicting himself the next. So when, in fact, the Mueller investigation becomes public, people aren't going to be shocked and surprised by what they hear, and they'll be confused, which is exactly what Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani want to have happen.
Let me ask you, Congressman, if Trump was willing to engage in a big business deal right through to the election, and obviously in conflict with everything he's saying to the American people at the time, why wouldn't he be willing to collude on other matters like getting Hillary, beating her?
Well, it's a very reasonable question, and with each passing day, with each bit of additional information and evidence that comes into the public domain, the cloud of suspicion over 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue and the Trump campaign grows stronger. That's why we need a full and fair investigation, which is currently being led by the special counsel, Bob Mueller, into whether there was a serious conspiracy between the Trump campaign at the highest levels and Russian spies to sell out our democracy and artificially place Donald Trump into 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And we as House Democrats are determined to make sure that when that investigation reaches its logical conclusion, that information gets presented to the American people.
Well, here's another example right in today of how Trump appears to be helping the Russians. Remember this guy, Deripaska? He's the billionaire. There's a picture of him there. Billionaire Russian oligarch. He used to work with Paul Manafort. Manafort reportedly owes him millions of dollars. He's into him for that, and even offered him briefings on the Trump campaign during this summer of 2016. Well, this month, the Trump administration defended their sudden decision to lift U.S. sanctions on Deripaska's companies, saying he had made major financial concessions in exchange for relief. However, the New York Times has now reviewed a binding confidential document signed by both sides that appears to show that Deripaska could actually benefit from the agreement. That document reportedly shows that the deal contains provisions that free him from hundreds of millions of dollars in debt while leaving him and his allies with majority ownership of his most important company. Congresswoman, what do you make of this constant throwing of kisses, blowing of kisses to Moscow? Constant. I've never seen an American president more pro-Russian.
So, Chris, I would also say that there's a couple of other things we have to look at. Mr. Mnuchin, who is the Treasurer Secretary, who put this together, also sold his interests in a Hollywood studio to Leonard Blavatnik. Blavatnik, as it turns out, also gave $1 million to the Trump inaugural. Blavatnik also is the second largest holder of Rusal stock, which is the company that Deripaska owns. The company has actually seen its shares increase by 125% since the announcement was made about the sanctions being removed. This is a travesty, and it shows once again that for President Trump, all roads lead to Russia.
Congressman, what can the Congress do? The House of Representatives, which is run by Democrats now, what can you do before you get a Mueller report? That could be 6 months on. It could be February. It could be next summer. God knows when. What can you do before that to investigate this president?
Well, I think we're going to see active investigations that are ongoing, conducted by Jackie and the Intelligence Committee, as well as under the chairmanship of Jerry Nadler, with respect to unfolding and unraveling some of these connections so that the information gets presented to the American people in the event that the Department of Justice decides to block the public's access to the Mueller investigation. As you know, Chris, having worked here in a high level within the institution, We pride ourselves in the House in being a separate and co-equal branch of government, and we have a constitutional responsibility to serve as a check and balance on an out-of-control executive branch. We're going to take that responsibility seriously. I think that's going to be led by both the Intel Committee as well as the Judiciary Committee.
Congresswoman, can you get enough evidence on your own to consider impeachment, to consider it? Or do you have to have Robert Mueller? People are saying right now, around the edges, that the Congress shouldn't wait for Mueller, that they should act on their own investigative ability to find the evidence one way or the other and decide on impeachment. Do you need Mueller?
I think we do need Mueller. I think he has so much more information than we have at this time. But I was really struck by the poll today that shows that 60% of the Americans don't trust the President of the United States. Is that a high crime and misdemeanor? Is that a lack of trust in the President of the United States that we should act upon? It's certainly something we need to start considering. But I do think the Mueller investigation and its report is going to be key to our movement forward.
Okay, thank you so much, both of you. Congresswoman Jackie Speier of California, and Congressman Hakeem Jeffries of Brooklyn. By the way, you represent my son now. He lives in your district, Mr. Jeffries. I just checked the map.